Welcome back, everyone, and we're ready for our next speaker. So looking forward to Paul speaking about HR, some of the challenges and opportunities out there. Paul commenced his career, his HR career in the UK in 1995. He first moved into Australia in 2002 and has worked in HR management roles at QBE, Alliance, Allianz, General Electric, and KPMG before taking up country HR leadership roles at Wills Towers Watson and BNY Mellon. In 2017, Paul founded PK People Solutions, and simultaneously, through HR Coach, he gained the most highly rated and respected HR accreditation in Australia for HR consultants working with SMEs. Paul has worked with more than 60 clients in a variety of industries and assignments. Paul is passionate about helping business get the best performance from their people. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Eob, and thank you very much for inviting me to a great session today. I've certainly enjoyed listening to all the speakers that have preceded me today, you know, I just hope that I know that Lara's obviously probably going to jump back and deal with the children, but there's a few things there that I think that I can definitely relate to in terms of what Lara was saying. So the way this will work well for me is that I have some content to present, but I always love questions as well. So one of my aims today really is to get through, give some content. Eob, if you want to interrupt me anytime, please feel free to do so, because I like a chat, so that works for me. But obviously, would love to hear any questions you've got or other people have got at the end as well.
Well, I'll get everyone to send us the questions on chat. So
sure.
If you want to send us a question on chat, and I'll jump in to ask you some questions, Paul.
Perfect. That works really well. Fantastic. Okay, well, hello everybody, and thank you very much for listening to this today. I'm going to go through the topic is about standing tall through labour shortages. That yes, we have that currently in Australia. It also exists in the majority of the rest of the world. Not all the rest of the world, but the majority of the rest of the world. And we've heard that a lot today as well. In our last presentation, it's obviously something that Lara mentioned as well, in terms of it being a current and a real challenge. So what I'm really going to do is talk about where we are now, the current reality of the situation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between maintaining alignment versus retention, and the balance between the two. I'm then going to go through and say, okay, so where we are, using some Australian based research, what does that data tell us, and some proactive tools and tips that I can share with people as well. And I guess probably the main thing really here is what I call probably completing the jigsaw. And when I say completing the jigsaw, is that I firmly believe that some of the things I'm going to talk about today, whilst they are in response to the current challenges of a labour short market, they're good habits, and they're good habits to get into, to make sure that you can prevent what I call it the leaky bucket syndrome. And when I say leaky bucket syndrome in the context of people, I talk about having a business with people where people come and go, and people leave a business. And in the past, people have thought, oh, if somebody's left, fair enough, we'll get somebody else. That becomes a challenge, but there's always a cost involved. So that leaky bucket is always the cost of losing somebody in the business. And a lot of research talks to that, about being anywhere between 50% of an annual salary, and sometimes up to 200 plus. I have various debates with people that think it's more expensive than that, but let's say it's about 50 to 100%. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little about where we are, the current scenario. There's 9 points that I'm going to cover here, but some of them there's some more detail on others. I think that there's some obvious ones here, and some you would have heard before, others may be less obvious. But I think it's important to understand in terms of in this current labour short market, people throw COVID out as the excuse, people throw lockdown out as the excuse, but there's a lot more than that. So first of all, the net migration. So net migration over a period of 14 years. Obviously, we had negative migration in 2021 with border closures. But net migration really wasn't really keeping a pace even before this time as well. Other reason that's got us to where we are today, an aging population. I first came to Australia in 2002. I heard about an aging population being an issue there. 20 years later, we still have an aging population. It's still a problem, and it's one of the problems that's got us to where we are now. And particularly in the scenario when we got to COVID and lockdowns, we had certain people that that decided to maybe maybe baby boomers, people that maybe 55 and above, thought maybe I've had enough. Maybe actually now is time to actually think about bringing forward retiring. And at the other end of the extreme, I've also come across a lot of scenarios where people that are younger have decided to take this great leap into running their own business. I'm sure there are a few people that are online now that might have done that themselves. And what a great idea. What it is doing though is it is mean that there's a real shortage of labour out there. A couple of things here. One thing here that's quite startling is that that this comes from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and there was projected employment growth for the years 2022 to 2026. This information actually came out in 2020, but it was been particularly well hidden that there was always going to be a significantly increased demand for skilled labour, and certainly, as you can see there, the highest one there was people in various professional roles. And when I think about some of the people that I talk to and clients of mine, there are lots of people in professional roles. Whether it be people in accountants, solicitors that are really struggling to find people, but also community workers as well, and trades is another big one that I come across a lot as well. So there was always going to be a predicted growth, and as you see, that particular research there looks up to 2026 as well. So it's not going to slow down anytime soon as well. One of the other things that we've had as well, this one is more widely publicised. Our lowest unemployment rate in 48 years has been something that's received quite a lot of attention as well. I think it's a couple of other things here that I'm just going to talk to. People have physically relocated. If I look out to the right there, I see the highway heading up towards the Central Coast. I think there's been a relocation north equally. As I look at a couple of my colleagues on the screen here, there's been a relocation south as well for people that are further south. So people have moved out of big cities, and that's not just in Sydney. That's in a lot of the capital cities within Australia. So I think that, as I say, realistically, there's been a whole number of big issues that have combined, and I call it the perfect storm. In terms of we've got a number of factors that have come together to get us into a situation where we are now. Now, I don't like doom and gloom, so I always like to look in terms of, okay, so what do I do then? What I tend to do is I like to think about having a structured approach to HR, because nothing happens by accident. So I use a structured approach to HR, which is a 5-point plan. And in that, it's trying to work out and using a measure to find out where a business is now, putting processes and systems in place and governance and compliance systems in place to minimize the risk for a business. And then on the right hand side, you see there, it's making sure that performance is being managed effectively, and also to make sure that there's enough improvement projects going on, a piece of work to try and help develop people further as well. And by having sort of like 5 points in place, it really makes sure there's a complete and holistic HR plan to help businesses move forward as well. Now, that being said, as I said earlier on, one of the things I'm going to cover is talking a little bit about alignment and also retention. So the model on the left-hand side there talks to businesses that have got low levels of strategy and businesses that have got high level of strategy, and businesses with a low level action and a high level action. And the key thing to this one is it's a relationship between the two that counts. So when you've got businesses with a high level of strategy and what people do every day is linked to that strategy, then that business is actually poised for success and poised for growth. Conversely, if you've got businesses that that basically what people are doing is not connected to the strategy of the business, they're in that wheel there, busy being busy, and not achieving anything. And then you've got the scenario there of businesses that are exiting the market and startups on the other side. But consistently, this model first came out in 2004, and this gets measured every year in terms of where businesses in Australia sit there. Rather worryingly, only 22% of businesses go in the quadrant where what people do every day is linked to the strategy, and alarmingly, 48% of businesses around there in that red zone. Busy being busy and not having what people do every day is not linked to the strategy of the business. I'm going to talk in a little while about a model that I use and some data that comes out from that as well. But the other thing as well in terms of I was actually on the right hand side is a career monitor model, and that's really about retention. So when it comes down to retaining people in a business, is important. I was working with a client yesterday afternoon, and working with 3 of their people on this, and really what it's looking at in terms of once again, it's a relationship between 2 things. It's about what people are doing versus actually what they want to do in their career or what's linked to the business. So this looks at it on a more individual level. So once again, where we want to get people to is we want to get people to what they're doing every day in their work is very much aligned and linked to where they want to get in their career or where the business wants them. So I think those 2 models become they are linked in their own right, but they become important when it comes to this big challenge, because the big challenge we have is retaining people, and retaining people is the absolute key in a market that will continue to be short of high quality labour for some time. One of the tools I use looks at the difference between employer and employee engagement, and there's some stats here that have come out over the last 2 years that talks to this. And here are sort of like some pointers in terms of some of the challenges that the employers are seeing. And employers are becoming increasingly concerned about pay rates. Just to be clear, paying people more money is not the golden egg that will always work for a business that has got deep pockets. Everything else needs to be lined up as well. Having an internal succession plan in place, really important to make sure that a business actually has a plan about how they're going to progress going forward, and then basically making sure that decisions are being made in an effective way, managing the expectations of employees, and so a couple of comments I've heard earlier on this afternoon: no micromanaging. It never has worked. It never will work. And one of the other issues that employers are having as well is obviously when they get people, converting them to employees becomes an increasing challenge. I had a client this week thought they'd landed somebody for their IT team, only for the pin to be pulled late on. Employee concerns in terms of where they stand. They've got the same concern about making sure they're being paid effectively. Once again, employees have had efficient plan decision making is something they want to see. They want to see as well. Opportunities to progress. It's sometimes hard when we think about small business in terms of are there opportunities to progress. And the way I try and get business to think about this, even in a very small business, is that people progressing is actually learning more skill and learning more about developing themselves. It's not necessarily getting a promotion in the business. It's about upskilling. And one of the ways of doing that, to spot on to a point that Lara mentioned in her presentation, is professional development in the job. And the final one there in terms of key employee concern is having an efficient workplace. Now, having said all that, what we know is that one size doesn't fit all. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, there is no silver bullet. And actually trying to find out with businesses what's relevant for your business or businesses you work with, it's important to have some kind of data to understand that. We know that I love icebergs. The iceberg slides are always my favorite in any presentation. So we know what we can actually see and what we can feel, but it's what's under the water that is a real challenge. We know sometimes employees don't like giving bad news. Sometimes in a larger business, managers and supervisors might put their own spin on it. I was talking to a client this morning that's suffering from that problem at the moment, and wanting to have a deeper understanding about where things are. And we know that there's a lot of information that goes under the waterline. And if people actually had the information in hand, they probably would be acting it already anyway. So I firmly believe, and I first started giving this message out probably about this time last year, being proactive in terms of retaining people is absolutely key. I've changed one thing since I first started talking about this. Yes, checking with people before it's too late. Absolutely right. The one change I've said is actually who to check in with. It's important you check in with everybody, but in terms of going through detail about why someone might stay, I've took the view probably a year or so ago, then to perhaps look at your top 20, 25%. I've now switched on that view now in terms of it's so key to hold on to people that are worth holding on to. Don't restrict yourself to that number, because everybody, you could have a business where everybody needs to stay, and you want to do whatever you can to hold on to them. And I think once you've got once you've basically had a conversation, you need a plan, like anything, to make you plan in terms of what you're going to do. Some of the things that I use, so I've as Eddie said at the start as well, I use license tools in part of my business. There are probably three ones that really are probably a key in relation to this presentation. Fusion is a program that looks at the culture of the business. We're a big theme on culture today, and it actually looks to measure where a business stands against other high-performing Australian businesses. That's going back on research back to 2004. Talked about the model I talked about earlier on in terms of employee alignment and measuring that. So that's all I use is called Star Workplace. That looks at both employer and employee engagement, and also covers culture to a lesser extent as well. And for a very small business, whereas Star Workplace and Fusion, I tend to work with businesses probably of 10 people and above. Career Monitor is a tool which I've used even with a business of just one employee. I worked with a legal firm a few months back, who had a lawyer, and the principal was legal. I said, I cannot afford to lose this employee of mine. Help me understand what will retain them. So I look at a number of different solutions to help people, but I think it's really just down to what works. So as I said, I like questions. So hopefully now I've gone through and put a few pieces in the jigsaw. I thought maybe 20 minutes of talking and 10 minutes of questions was about there, and I think I'm there or thereabouts. So certainly happy to invite questions from anybody in the room.
Paul, we have one question for you.
Perfect, thank you.
So that's from Trevor Weeding, one of our speakers. Do you have examples of each model that we might all be familiar with?
Do I have examples of each model? Sorry, could you just repeat that question, please, again? Yep.
Yes. So an example of all the models that you mentioned that's related to small business owners.
Yeah, no, so I think that, look, I think probably to go through the three that I mentioned, I might just flick back to the last couple of slides. That's okay. Yeah. So I think Career Minds is very, very much one that it was, when it was designed, it was actually built for, to look at retaining absolute key people. As I say, I worked with a client yesterday afternoon who's got, they've currently got 4 people in their business. And basically they're, they wanted to go through, and they're basically 3 of them they absolutely have to retain. So that was really going through that client to work out in terms of the people that are there, what's gonna retain them. That tool's benchmarked originally against research about 10,000 people about why they stay and why they leave a business. And particularly, I think for small business, that's a tool which is, as I see it, very, very practical and easy to implement, because it looks at solutions about what's going to work for this person. So for example, yesterday, this particular business has got 2 people that they're probably not at risk. There's some things that they would like to see that are different. And they've got 1 person that they need to see probably quite a lot quite soon. So and it's based on your simple traffic lights. So I've got in that business I've got 2 greens and 1 red. And red means that probably to retain that person, things have got to change in the next 3 to 6 months. And I'm confident knowing the business owner they are, because there's some things already in place. Probably just very quickly to answer Trevor's question, you say Fusion really is looking at culture. So that really is a deep dive into culture, and that's really that's based on 50 statistically validated questions that are based on culture. As itself as a tool has been around for it's quite a short time, only 4 years. But some of the deeper research actually comes from the other tool on the other side, STAR, to benchmark results going back to 2004. And as I say, STAR is really a tool looking at mixing employer and employee engagement and culture, and also an assessment against that 5-point framework that I talked about earlier on. And those top 2 really, generally speaking, I would say businesses of 10 or more people are where they become.
When you mean culture as a platform, so it actually assesses the whole culture of the
it measures it basically measures against other businesses in terms of so a business can look in terms of so other Australian businesses that there's around 1,000 in total currently in the database, and it looks in terms of so what businesses have currently got in place. And some of the things we've talked about today, right? I've heard not micromanaging, I've heard good diversity come up today. So there's no, as I always say, this is not new. There's no surprises. But look, I think probably going to one thing I'd say as well, back to what's earlier on as well, is that good habits. Trying to keep people on. This is being brought about as a result of the situation within. But these are good habits to have, not just now, but also for the future as well. So I hope that answers Trevor's question.
Yeah, that does. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul. That was a fantastic presentation. Let me just quickly check if there are any more questions. Yes, there is one more. For small business owners, example, a tradie who is finding it hard to find candidates, if there was one thing they could do to make the role more attractive, what might that be?
That's a very good question. Creativity, and that's because that's what I'm finding. Actually, and I'm going to take this from one extreme to the other. And the reason I say that is doing something different is going to be the way of trying to attract people in. If you can do something that your competitors aren't doing. I mean, just something simple. One thing that I'm inspired by Lara, but she mentioned in terms of something like either discounted gym membership, something in terms of do something that's just a little bit outside the box. That certainly I'm finding that that businesses that are looking to do things a little bit differently are the ones that actually are becoming more attractive for people to join. And trades is very hard. We clearly need to do a better job getting people into trades. and hopefully I'm keeping fingers crossed to try and help give the trades a boost. That that our immigration, people are getting people in the country with skills that are needed. I'm hoping that continues to increase, and some of the bureaucracy around it becomes easier in the months to come, because we certainly do need it.
Yeah, so it's funny, both Lara and Eden, they both mentioned creative ways of retaining their staff, which was fantastic to hear. I mean, we have a panel discussion coming up next, and we've got Chris Francini from Absolute Corporate Solutions. So she definitely is in that trades business. So it'll be great to hear her insights around what she can provide around that, what she's doing. Marjorie, I think Chris will also be able to answer that question for you, which is fantastic. Paul, thank you so much again for joining us today. What a fantastic, insightful presentation. And we look forward to seeing you around in our community, that's for sure.
Thank you, much appreciated. Thank you very much for inviting me today.